How do I meet my soulmate? How do I move on from heartbreak? Does my dream relationship even exist? Are dating apps the only way I can meet people? Are all relationships this hard? This is Between the Sheets with Dr. Love. Each week, your host dives into sex, love, dating, relationships, and everything in between. Welcome to Between the Sheets with Dr. Love.
Hey, it's me, Dr. Love, and welcome back to another episode of Between the Sheets with me, Dr. Love. So today's episode might be one that's going to sit in your chest. It's going to touch parts of you that you've probably avoided looking at for years. So it's going to be a good episode. But I say that with so much love because what we're talking about today is something I see in so many clients, especially the kind, empathetic, big-hearted ones who feel everything 10 times deeper than the average person. So today we're going to talk about the empathy trap. Yes, it's a thing. How caring so deeply for someone else can actually keep you stuck in a relationship that is slowly driving the life out of you. And I'm not saying that dramatically. I mean, it is draining. It drains the spark, the joy, the desire, the sense of self, everything, motivation. So take a deep breath and let's open this space together. So we're going to talk about empathy, what it really is. So we throw around this word empathy like it's the holy grail of being a good person. And it is beautiful. And it definitely is a gift. Not everyone has it. It is one of the greatest things we can bring into a relationship. But we rarely talk about the shadow side of empathy. The part where you feel someone else's emotions so intensely that they actually override your own. And I have definitely been this person, and I'm a massive empath. I can feel people when they walk across the road if they're upset or something's going on. It just hits me in my gut. So I had to learn what this was doing to me in my relationships. But it definitely overriding my own sense of self or my own feelings. So if we talk about a client I've recently had, okay, we'll call her Mia. She comes to me and she says, Dr. Love, I can feel my partner's pain even before he realizes he's upset. It's like my whole body braces for it. And I thought, listening to Mia, I said, yep, that is the empathy trap. It's the empathy trap at 150%. Empathy becomes dangerous when we mistake it for responsibility. Suddenly, it's not, I feel for you. What actually happens, it becomes, I am responsible for how you feel. And this is where Mia's getting stuck, is the responsibility to try and soothe, or the responsibility of, is this my fault or how can I help you? The responsibility of that feeling is the trap. So when your heart outvotes the truth, there's a problem, okay? It's one of the most heartbreaking patterns I see in clinic or with clients is when someone sits on my couch with tears in their eyes and they whisper to me, I know I need to leave. I know this relationship isn't right for me, but I can't because I can't hurt them like that. I can't watch them fall apart. I know how that feels. And it is said with deep pain and confusion, and they are not indecisive about this. They know that this pain is going to be there. But they do know what's right for their soul. Being in this relationship is not right for their soul. But their empathy is way louder than what they need to do for themselves. And that's the empathy trap. I'll give you another example. I've got another client, we'll call him Aiden. And he's come to see me. And he said, Dr. Love, I'd rather feel miserable than to see her cry because of me. And he's not talking about love. He's actually talking about guilt, duty, this fear that he has that he's going to make her so upset, but it's dressed up as compassion. And you're making a decision in your relationship based on what it's going to do to the other person, and you're abandoning self. And the cost of that is that you stay. And in staying, you slowly disappear. The version of you that showed up initially isn't there anymore. Your needs get smaller. Your voice gets quieter. Your emotional energy fades. You become really tired and think, what's wrong? You'll go get blood tests. You'll go see a naturopath. You'll try and adjust your food. You'll look at your sleeping patterns, all of it. Resentment will grow quietly. Resentment's like mold on the walls. It just starts a little bit and then eventually you see it growing up. Not only do you lose yourself, the relationship becomes an emotional palliative care facility. The relationship is alive, but barely breathing. And that is where we find people who have big hearts. It's the martyr heart. That's what I like to call it, the martyr heart. The person who actually feels too much. Now, if you think you're a martyr, I'm actually speaking to you. And I say that with love because I've been one in my past. I know that this is the person that holds the emotional weight of the relationship. Sometimes life, sometimes the world, sometimes our friends, our working environment, our family that we come from, our pets, whatever it is, but the emotional weight is real. And if you're in a relationship, you protect your partner from the truth because you're so scared the truth will break them. And you carry this guilt, the responsibility, the emotional load, but at the same time, you're ignoring your own needs. And you tell yourself, if they're okay, then I'm okay. If they're not hurting, then you know what? I can put up with this. I can at least breathe. But that's the heartbreak. The reality is that you're staying with someone because you feel bad for them. Is that love? Is being a martyr, is that love? Is that fear that you hold, that you feel like you can't handle seeing someone hurting because of a decision that you made? Is it noble? Is it just looking noble, or is it fear? Is it the scared inner child in you saying, I don't want to be the reason someone else feels pain, because I know what that pain feels like. And that right there is actually trauma speaking. And that's where we start to unpack, where does this come from? Where does this pattern actually, where did it come from? The behavior has roots. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. It comes from somewhere. So let's look at a few reasons as to why we could show up in this space around the empathy trap. One of them could be the anxious attachment style. So if you grew up feeling like love was unpredictable or conditional, it is a learning experience that taught you, if I'm upset, I might lose someone I love. It's unpredictable. So then you become a peacemaker. I'll do everything right. I'll become the people pleaser because of your survival strategy. And that's what it was. I'm going to keep everyone happy. I survive, I keep connection. I'm going to minimize conflict. I survive, I keep connection. But what happens is that you absorb their emotions so you don't have to trigger that abandonment wound. And if that is you, you tend to stay in relationships long past the expiry date. And it's not because you want to. It's because leaving feels like you're committing this unforgivable emotional crime. And so you stay. The other thing that shows up in the empathy trap is that there's a trauma history. A lot of deeply empathetic people have been through some serious pain. And I see this all the time. Clients who have come and sat on my couch or jumped online and spoke to me, and they were seriously betrayed by people that were supposed to love them. And it could have been abuse, it could have been neglect, it could have been infidelity, but they often say, I will never make anyone feel the way I was made to feel. And so what do? They overcorrect. They love too much. They stay too long. They sacrifice themselves to avoid hurting someone else. And that is one that I know too well. That is one that kept me stuck for too many years. So I get it. The other thing they do is avoid relationships altogether. And what you do is that you find themselves self-soothing or connecting through other ways. And sometimes it's food and sometimes it's addiction, and there's a whole other thing going on there. The third thing that shows up with these clients in an empathy trap is that they may have been a parentified child. So maybe you were the child who looked after everyone, that took on the parenting duties. The siblings were your responsibility. You were doing the lunches or the breakfast way before your time. You had to walk them to school and bring them home. You had to look after the kids. Dad worked at night, or you had to watch your brother and sister while they nourished their addictions at night. Whatever it was, you became parentified and you probably became a bit of a protector at some point. And you grew up reading the emotional temperature of a room, because it meant that you could stay safe and probably your siblings. And for you, now as an adult, you still do that. You feel responsible for your partner's happiness, for reading the room, for your partner's stability, for their self-worth, and you're taking on the burden of making sure they are okay. At what expense? At zapping your energy. And if that is what you are experiencing right now, it's an illusion that you think you're choosing your partner. You're not. You're not choosing your partner in that moment. You're actually choosing your childhood role, the role you played as a child, over your partner. It's you reenacting your past rather than acting in the present or choosing the future. And just sit with that for a minute. You are showing up now in the role that you once played. And so what happens? You actually stay for all of the wrong reasons. You're not staying for the here and now because you're not present. But staying out of the empathy trap backfires on you. And you have these feelings of guilt, which plagues you if you don't show up. Because you've got this fantasy going on. If I stay, I can protect them from pain. If I stay, I can make sure they're okay. But the reality is, you start to emotionally shut down. You start to reduce your affection for your partner. You start to pull away physically. You avoid having sex. You avoid having conversations that are needed to be had. And you start living this parallel life with them, like you become housemates. you slowly start to resent them, and they feel it every single day, but you continue to do it. And a partner who stays out of guilt eventually becomes a cold partner. And it's not intentional. I want you to reflect on this. If you have stayed in a relationship out of guilt, eventually you become cold, distant, disconnected. Not intentionally, but it's inevitable. Because you have put yourself in a position that is not nourishing your soul. But it is much more painful for the person you are saying you are protecting than it is to tell them the truth. It is easier for that person to be clear and honest and for you to have the breakout to sit in this and have a slow death. I remember one client telling me that they said, Dr. Love, I'd rather he had left me quickly than abandoned me so slowly over the 2 years, because that was punishment. And let me tell you, she meant that. It was so hard to keep trying in a no-win situation. And I want you to just have a think about, what does your scenario look like with the empathy trap? Your nervous system here, when you think about leaving, may go into override, okay? This is where you start to blame yourself. Why can't I just end it? Why am I so weak that I can't do this? Why do I feel so guilty? There is a science to this. Empaths literally feel another person's distress in their body. It's like your mirror neurons fire like crazy and your nervous system responds as if you are the one being rejected, abandoned, and harmed. And so you are feeling everything for real. So when you imagine hurting somebody you love, your body actually reacts like you are about to have that same experience, that very trauma. So it's not weakness, it's actually wiring. But the good news is, wiring can be rewired. You can be healed. So how do you do that? How do we break the empathy trap? The first thing you do is give yourself permission to choose you. You're allowed to be disappointed. You're allowed to disappoint somebody. You're allowed to cause somebody temporary pain if what you want is not what they want. You're allowed to make decisions that honor your growth. It doesn't have to stall your growth just so somebody else has peace. I want you to remember that you're dealing with two adults here. And adults can handle pain. They may handle it differently, but we are built to be able to handle a certain amount of pain. And I'm sure if they've got a history, they've probably survived a heartbreak before you. So I think they're probably going to be okay to survive a heartbreak after you. So we shouldn't take on that much ownership or thinking we're that powerful that our decision to leave is actually going to destroy their lives. We have to give them some credit that they're going to be able to have the resources to at some point bounce back. Now, it may not be immediate, but definitely bounce back at some point. Maybe put yourself in your partner's position and reverse the scenario. What if my partner didn't love me anymore? Would I want them staying just because they feel sorry for me? I know for me, that's a hell no. And I don't think if I had to ask anyone that, they would ever say yes. I think the answer would always be no. So I want you just to reflect and think, would I appreciate the same thing? The other thing you can do is feel your guilt that comes up, but you don't have to obey it like it's some type of ruling stance. Guilt is just old conditioning, and it's just trying to run your new life. You've got to be able to let guilt be there, but it shouldn't choose for you. Don't let it choose for you. Let it show up, call the feeling, there's my guilt again, and let it go. And that's what you should do with most feelings. Just call it. There's my fear again. There's my guilt again. That's my compassion showing up. There's my empathy. Call it and let it go. Don't let it run your life. The other thing you can do is communicate clearly, kindly, but with integrity. So you don't need to break someone to leave them. It doesn't have to be awful. You just need to tell them the truth. And maybe say something like this: I care about you deeply, but this relationship is no longer aligned with what I need. And staying would actually be dishonest, and you actually deserve someone who is fully present and wants to invest in this relationship. Now, saying something like that offers compassion and truth together. Truth doesn't have to sound nasty. It can come with compassion. It doesn't have to come with guilt. Truth will set you free. They say that, right? The other thing you probably don't want to do is rescue them through the breakup. This is where the empath usually slips up. You end up finding the courage to end things, and then you stay emotionally involved with them because you don't want them to feel alone. This actually just prolongs their pain and yours. It keeps you in the loop for longer than you need. Breakups actually need boundaries as well. And being an empath doesn't mean everyone gets access to you whenever they want. You have boundaries. So before we wrap this up, I want you to hear me out here. If you're in a relationship and you're in this empathy trap, I want you to understand that you're not being cruel for feeling like the relationship doesn't work for you or isn't working for you. That's not cruel. That's not you being selfish for speaking a truth. And this is not you being nasty because it doesn't align with you any longer. You're just someone who feels deeply and sometimes too deeply. But your feelings don't have to imprison you because that's what's happened. Historically, you've been held prisoner by how deeply you feel for others. So you are allowed to choose peace. And sitting in a relationship where you are so invested in how they are going to feel and you being dishonest at the same time is not peaceful. You're allowed to choose joy. And remember, joy becomes diminished when you are not sitting in your truth or if you're sitting in resentment. You're allowed to choose a relationship where you don't have to sacrifice yourself to keep the other person intact. So I don't want to get what I want because it's going to destroy you. That's not a fair exchange here in the relationship. This is not healthy. And the person you're actually afraid of hurting, I'm going to say this, I'm going to give them some autonomy here and give them the benefit of the doubt, or maybe give them some credit that they're able to move on, that they will move on, that they will eventually rebuild. And maybe sooner than later or later than sooner, it doesn't matter because that's their journey. They will rebuild and they will find someone who is at some point truly available for them. So I want you to understand that it's not your job to babysit them in that space. For you, when you do this, what you might find is that you will finally be able to breathe again. Take a deep breath and not have to carry it. Because having empathy really is a gift. but only when it is paired with boundaries. Otherwise, it becomes a prison. So without boundaries, you're in a cage, and it's a cage that you've actually built for yourself. And you were never meant to live small. So why do that to yourself? So I hope this episode is actually going to be able to give you some insight into the empathy trap that our empaths out there are feeling. So I'm going to leave you with this episode. Remember to like, subscribe, and share the episode. Drop me a line if you'd like to comment about this topic or what experience you've had in your empathy trap. And don't forget to share or request a topic for my podcast. I hope that's been helpful for you. I'll see you on the next episode. I'm Dr. Love.
Thanks for listening to the podcast with Dr. Love. For all show notes and resources mentioned in this episode, head to www.drlove.com. That's DRLURVE.com. Got a question for Dr. Love? Email her at ask@dr.love.com. Love the show? Remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Leave us a review or share it with your friends. Thanks for listening, lovers. We'll see you on the next episode. This is Between the Sheets with Dr. Love.